Good morning, everyone. My name's Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful day. We have a great program planned for you with this pop-up conversation with Representative Rosa DeLauro, the Democrat from Connecticut, who also serves as ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee. A lot of things to talk about on government funding. We're also going to talk news of the day as well as national security modernization and warfighter readiness in the United States. I'm Andrew Desiderio, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, joining us this morning for that part of the conversation. A big thank you to Collins Aerospace, a RTX company, for partnering with us to make this conversation possible. After our conversation with the Congresswoman, I'm going to be joined by Henry Brooks. He's president of Power and Controls at Collins Aerospace for a fireside chat. As always, we encourage you in the room and those watching on the live stream to share this conversation on social media. You can find Punchbowl News at all social media channels. With that, I'm going to welcome the Congresswoman and Andrew Desiderio to the stage.
Watch for the trees.
We gotta don't get attacked by the plant.
By the plants.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
All right, we are going to get started. We've got a lot to cover with a few news of the day questions. Andrew, I'm going to let you tee us off.
So there's no shortage of things to talk about, Congresswoman.
Amen.
But I wanted to talk about the start off with the big news from yesterday that your party's leadership had decided to vote to table Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to vacate effort. Do you think this is the right move, and do you worry about the perception that Democrats are quote-unquote saving a Republican speaker?
No, I think we have to have the functioning of the House of Representatives, and we need a speaker. We know what we went through, just last year with 3 weeks without a Speaker of the House. And so that, we don't need, and I don't believe anyone, there may be a few that want to see chaos continue, but we can't do that because that's not our job. Our job is really to govern and to make sure that we're having government be able to address the needs of the American people and not be non-functioning. That above all. And I think the majority of the people in the House, Democrats and Republicans, believe that we should be moving forward with what they're with governing. So
we reported this morning that the leadership in the House Democrats were non-committal, though, about maybe continuing to kind of help save Speaker Johnson. Is that the right strategy?
Well, this is all about the various issues that come up, and there needs to be a cooperative relationship, and quite frankly, that cooperative relationship during former Speaker McCarthy's time there was less cooperation of moving forward. Now, my hope is that we will see that, but it's both sides. In a legislative body, no one gets everything that they want. It is the give and take and the compromise that gets you moving forward. I should have started by saying a thank you to you, Anna, and to Andrea. I want to just compliment Punchbowl because, as I mentioned to you, I think you've become, really an essential source of news on Capitol Hill. So thank you all for that very, very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I want to shift to funding, which you are very involved in as the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee. There was some big approps news last week from Tom Cole, the Republican chairman of the committee, about the earmark process.
Right.
He essentially says that he's going to be banning earmarks for nonprofits. I know you have a good relationship with Tom Cole, but what does it say to you that that was one of his first moves, and how concerned are you that there aren't going to be earmarks for nonprofits?
Well, first of all, I have an excellent relationship with Chairman Cole, and we had for 8 years either been chair or ranking member of the Labor HHS subcommittee. Good relationship with regard to things like the NIH increased funding for the National Institutes of Health by 58%, Title I, special education, a whole lot of issues on which we see eye to eye, and we have personal respect for one another. And are there differences? Certainly. Now, and I'm going to be meeting on this issue of nonprofits in the next couple of days. And my own view is I think it's not a good road to go down, because as I examined the projects that came through the Transportation and HUD Committee in terms of nonprofits, there were 927 requests. That's Democrats and Republicans. And it doesn't seem fair to me to hurt both sides of the aisle. And then when I took a look at the projects, we're talking about projects that have to do with veterans housing, senior housing, boys clubs, girls clubs, worker training, all of these efforts. These are good, solid projects. And when I initiated community projects, and it may be self-serving, I apologize for that, but after 11 years, we had no projects, and they were abused. So what we did is to employ new requirements. We don't do for-profits, with the restrictions on no one can have a financial interest, either myself nor my family, etc. A whole lot of restrictions placed on it so that we'd make the process transparent. And that the way it's worked is that there's we can't exceed 1% of the federal budget to do this, divided House and Senate. Then within the body, divided Democrats and Republicans. And it has worked. It has worked. Now, with this effort, what happened for 2 years running, we worked very, very well. In 2023, the determination was made to exclude projects through labor, health and human services, and education, as well as financial services and defense. Now, the two biggest places where all members, make their requests were labor HHS and transportation and housing. So now you've cut off that avenue for people. And it's the communities. And what's happened with members is they reached out to their community, they got the applications, and then this came out, and they're scrambling now to figure out how they can, in fact, meet the needs of the community. Because, I'll say this last thing, that we require documentation that this is a community project. A resolution of the city council, mayor, municipalities' endorsements, groups, newspapers. And if they don't have documentation, I know I've had to call people in my own community and say, no documentation, we can't do this. So it is based on a need coming out of the community. And I think it's not the direction for us to go in. My hope is, I'm always an optimist in this effort, that we will, in these meetings in the next couple of days, we will look to see how we might be able to address this.
I know you guys just wrapped up FY24 appropriations.
Yes.
Quite late in the process. But this week, as we talked about before, there are several cabinet officials testifying about the president's FY 2025 budget request, both the Senate Appropriations Committee and the House Appropriations Committee. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is sort of governing the spending levels here. But where are you guys on a top-line agreement for FY 25?
Those conversations we haven't had. And you know that the agreement between former Speaker McCarthy and the president, and then subsequently with Speaker Johnson and Leader Schumer, that in the second year, what we were going to do is to increase by 1% both defense and non-defense.
Right.
And so, again, no conversations yet, hoping for that guidance as quickly as possible so that we can begin the process. But we are well underway with the hearing, with hearings in all the subcommittees. There were 17 this week. I try to make as many as I can, and so maybe up to 10. I can't get to the 17. You're just bouncing around the place. But the cabinet secretaries have pretty much all come up.
All right, well, let's shift to the topic of the day, national security modernization and warfighter readiness in the United States. As we've been talking about your role on the Appropriations Committee, the top Democrat, government funding is a key topic when it comes to military readiness. How big of a problem is it from your vantage point that Congress regularly is just kind of passing short-term funding bills instead of long-term planning and the ability to kind of make that transition that's needed?
Yeah, well, I think that question needs to be directed to the industry, and there are people in the industry in the audience. Mr. Brooks in aerospace at Collins. I know Sikorsky is in the House here, so that I would just say, so our RTX gets this, etc. There is no real planning, no consistency. You can't deal with the contracts that need to be made. It is really, it's no way, again, to govern through continuing resolutions. It puts, and look, I've come from Connecticut. It's a defense-dependent state. I understand what is happening with that industry, and that if we can't tell them what we're doing, where we're going, what the money involved is, it's not rocket science. You can't plan. And this is an industry, quite frankly, that has long-term planning. They reach out over the years to say, this is where we see the upside, this is where we see it down, depending on when the prior contracts, for engines or for helicopters, when that runs out.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask as well about the $95 billion foreign aid package that finally cleared the House and the Senate in the last couple of weeks here, signed into law by President Biden last week. This was hailed as a significant investment, not just in the security of our allies, but in the security of the United States as well, and the rebuilding of the U.S. defense industrial base.
Right.
We've got so many weapons coming from our stockpiles being sent to places like Ukraine, for example. Production's got to ramp up, and that's kind of what this is meant to address. Can you talk about the impact that this particular piece of legislation is going to have here in the United States?
Sure.
You mentioned your home state as well.
Yeah, I think it's very, very significant. And first of all, I mean, in all honesty, I believe that the holdup of the national security package for months, I found really outrageous, just that it was not. And I think about the moral clarity of some of the pieces that we're talking about, where you're talking about Ukraine and trying to survive and being invaded by Russia. And we all sit around and claim that if we don't, if Ukraine can't survive, then democracy doesn't survive, and this is a worldwide phenomenon. Well, my God, it took a long time for people, and some people just today don't believe that we should be, providing funds for Ukraine. So I was delighted, and Israel, and the Indo-Pacific with Taiwan, and humanitarian assistance. The world is clamoring for humanitarian assistance. Given the scope of the situation, yes, it's Gaza, but it is Haiti, it is Somalia, it is Sudan, all of these places where people are at great risk and starvation is rampant. So I just have to say that. But so it was a significant day for me in the House when this bill passed, and I was so delighted. And I made the case over and over again. And I will tell you, I reached out to the defense industry and asked for their help with talking to people about what this meant to the defense industry, to that industrial base that you speak about. Yes, people don't know that we provide the weaponry, the tanks, and whatever they need, and I believe that we ought to provide Ukraine with whatever it needs. So that's the case. But then I think they talk about 2/3 of the benefits are for the national security base in the United States, for our military industrial base. And so I thought that would be a powerful argument for some people. For some, it was not. But it was an overwhelming vote. And I predicted it would be an overwhelming vote. I thought there would have been an overwhelming vote months ago with the same outcome, and this strengthens our military base. And we had a number of the representatives from the industry really come out and talk about that and what it meant to their particular piece of the defense industry. So strongly helps what we are trying to do here.
I want to talk about the future, technology and the role that technology plays, and the role that the U.S. is playing right now when it comes to supporting military R&D, when it comes to how technology can be used to promote deterrence around the world. What kind of investment do you think the U.S. Should be putting into it, and particularly how much effort Congress should be putting in to make sure that there is that military R&D?
Well, look, you know, the simple answer is that we need to be making significant advancements, significant. And in AI, I think it's $1.8, $1.9 billion. Now, let me just step back a second. Where we are in terms of the our defense strategy. We are at a point where we are looking at our, you know, near-peer adversaries, the challenges that we face worldwide. And then you have to then deal with what is it in terms of our capabilities are we going to have to develop in order to be able to meet the new challenges? And there are new challenges. When you look at China, and we're looking at how they're catching up, the air dominance, the sea dominance, they're building more subs than we are, maybe, and they're not as good as ours, I know, from Electric Boat, but they're doing it. So it's like they can't catch us, if you will, and technology moves you in that direction, and that's in the space, where you look at dominance, it's at weaponry with hypersonics, it's cybersecurity. Major investment has to be done in R&D in order for us to be current and to be able to provide our defense capabilities. Given, look, Russia, we're looking at you know what's going on the battlefield and needing to innovate in that context. You know, so that technology is critical. Research and development is critical. I think we do look at research and development in defense. There's a priority on it, and I think most get it. I wish, quite frankly, in some other areas in terms of science and research, that we would have the same kind of commitment to doing that. I think we need to establish ourselves as science-based, research-based, because I think in the end, whether you're looking at the NIH and the discovery to cure or a military, our defense strategy, and it's being able to cope with the current challenges.
When you look at the security landscape just across the globe right now, you've got obviously Russia and Ukraine, the Middle East, Indo-Pacific. All this was addressed in the national security package we just discussed as well. Is the U.S. ready to respond to these global challenges, potential crises? You know, obviously some of them are all happening at once, as they are right now, but there's this question of, is China going to invade Taiwan? What needs to happen on the production side to make sure that Taiwan has what it needs to defend itself and to make sure that it won't require the United States, for example, to have boots on the ground in Taiwan?
Well, I think that was, you know, when we looked at the national security package, that was particularly true in the Indo-Pacific. But, you know, you spoke about the hearings earlier. You know, with Secretary Austin, yesterday with Secretary Kendall at the Air Force. You know, so I've been to a number of the defense subcommittee hearings with Ken Calvert and Betty McCollum. And if you're listening to them, they are preparing for that. They have so many plans that are in motion. And they are very cognizant of what we need to be doing and what the threats are for the future. So I have full confidence, I really do, that, you know, we can meet the challenges. You know, and the modernization piece is critical to that. You know, in some instances that where they pulled back in some places in some of the R&D, because what that R&D and that investment and our ability to produce is jobs. It is about jobs and keeping, as I said, Connecticut depends on the defense industry. You take a look, and when you cut back, it causes a problem. But the United States is prepared. I think we have the most sophisticated industry, and people should just go to visit. When I saw the production and the F-135, the engine at Pratt, and when I walked down the center aisle at Sikorsky, and you see the Black Hawk, etc. They say you get such a sense of strength of our defense industry.
You're quickly running out of time, but I do want to, you touched briefly on AI. That's kind of the topic in Washington across the board for different industries. We've been focusing on that for quite a while, but would love to get a sense from you about how you see AI and US preparedness, particularly as it comes to that modernization piece.
Well, you said it, and you talked about what are the new technologies. Are we going to be on the cutting edge of that technology? AI is certainly, up front, where we need to make a critical investment here because of the way in which it can help us modernize our industry and helping to wade through the thousands and thousands of models, of papers, etc., so as to get it streamlined in a way that we can make it useful, and the use of robotics, etc. All of which, if we're not on the cutting edge, we're just going to be behind. We're not going to be able to stay a step ahead with regard to China and Russia and North Korea. The rest. We have to maintain that cutting edge. AI does that for us. That's why you're going to look at $1.9 billion in an investment in the defense budget.
All right. Congresswoman DeLauro, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Love it.
Andrew, I appreciate it. You guys can exit that way.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. All right, now I'd like to welcome Henry Brooks to the stage for our fireside chat. He's president of Power and Controls at Collins Aerospace. Sir, welcome. All right. So thank you so much for joining me. You are responsible, I was reading about your role, it's very diverse. You're responsible for delivering solutions for customers across areas like aircraft, environmental control systems, electrical power systems, engine controls, and industrial bases. We heard a lot from Representative DeLauro about government funding and the impact that long-term planning has, and the fact that the U.S. has had some challenges with that. Can you talk about just the current environment and U.S. military readiness now that can kind of set the stage for the modernization piece?
Absolutely. It's interesting because the current geopolitical landscape says that whatever we're doing today is not good enough for tomorrow. In fact, it's questionable as to whether or not we're doing it fast enough for today. And so what we continue to do now is to work on important solutions and quicker solutions that we can bring to bear to modernize the industry itself. And that means that the technologies and solutions have to be above par. That means they also have to be done faster than we've ever done them before. So there's a mixture of digital work that we are doing and a mixture of, I'll call it, lab work that we're doing also to make sure that those two things meet. Where they do meet, we can provide solutions faster, we can fail fast and learn fast and actually move fast. And that's one of the largest things that we're doing. Increasingly, the threat matrix, if you will, when you look around the world today, requires a different whole thought process to war, if you will, or defending ourselves. And so the company, along with the government funding that Congresswoman DeLauro has provided in many cases, is helping us to really modernize the way we think about digital, the way we think about AI, and the way we think about labs and what labs can bring to us. And so it is a different world. The geopolitical landscape is different, and I don't think that it's done yet. I think it's going to continue to be different. We're looking at the the Asia-Pacific region now and creating a NATO-like organization there as well. We need it, but make no mistake about it, they're going to need different types of technologies there also to defend. And so It's a petrifying time to be in the industry, but it's also an exciting time to be in the industry because I will never bet against the USA.
All right. So we're going to talk about labs and testing and digital in a little bit, but you alluded to kind of the changing dynamics, the volatility that we're seeing across the world, from Russia and Ukraine to the Middle East now to the Indo-Pacific in particular. Talk about U.S. readiness in the Indo-Pacific region. What's happening there?
In the Pacific region now, the job that we have, if you will, is to make sure that we modernize the weapon systems that are actually in place. And frankly, no one wants to go to war. Everyone wants to have the ability to say we shouldn't go to war because it's going to end badly. And so our job now, I think, is to work with industry and with the government to make sure that the tools that we have and modernize the tools that we have in that region so that as those decisions are being made in China or wherever they may be made, they think twice about going to war against Taiwan. I won't get into the politics of China and Taiwan. That's not why I'm here. But what I can say is that our job as the U.S. is to make sure, and as RTX and Collins Aerospace, is to make sure that we're ready no matter what the circumstance may be. So we are spending. We're spending money in labs. We're spending money on modernization today to make sure that our tools and capabilities meet the requirements that the military has. And I think so far that's going the way that it should. I'm not this is not a briefing that I should go into any of that, so I won't. But a lot is going on, and I think we are preparing for whatever eventuality may come.
Let's talk about R&D. The Congresswoman talked a lot about the need for investment to kind of, as you're saying, kind of prepare for not only the wars that we're looking at across and the tensions across the globe today, but 10 years, 20 years out, kind of projecting that long tail that you're going to need. Can you talk about the commercial innovation and how you are applying that to the Defense Department, the private R&D?
We spend a lot of money every year on commercial development. And if you think about it, there's a TRL, technology readiness level, that needs to be somewhere between 6 and 9 before you can put it or bid a program. And we spend a lot of money maturing that technology on our own, if you will, so that when the time comes for an RFQ, RFP, RFI, we're actually ready for it. Well, we spent that money. So as we spent that money, now comes a defense program. If we can actually operate in a FAR 12 versus a FAR 15 atmosphere, if you will, FAR 12 being commercial item determination and FAR 15 being defense, if we can operate in a FAR 12 environment, we can actually give a solution that is less expensive because we've already spent a lot of the money, and we can also prove that it's very reliable because it's typically flying on a commercial airplane. And so now comes the need for modernization with the defense industry. We will take that same or similar technology, if you will, make the changes that are necessary so that it can go on a defense platform and you can get there faster. Now, what we can do based on our digital footprint, we can also then run simulations on what we know to be the loads for that defense industry application that we may have. And then once we do that, we can run our lab simulations as well to make sure that we actually meet the criteria. Once we do that, we can feel confident that whatever we put on a defense platform is going to be reliable and ready for use and lower risk than it would typically be if you had to start from scratch.
Let's go a little deeper there, because I think I was reading about this last night. Can you explain how RTX goes kind of beyond digital testing, right? That's kind of the standard bearer, but you're actually doing testing in real-time threats. I was reading about the enhanced power and cooling systems, but I'll leave it to you. You're the expert. To kind of give us a little bit of an education on that aspect of the real kind of time, the testing you're doing.
Sure. An example of that is the enhanced power and cooling system. And what we're doing there is saying, look, whatever systems we have today on the F-35 aren't going to be the systems of the future, right? They're going to need different reliability, they're going to need different capabilities, and they're going to fly different types of, I'll call it platforms, if you will. That being the case, what we've done is said, look, we're not Pratt Whitney, and so we don't make the engine. But what we can do is to understand that there's a need for more cooling on the platform. And so we have run digital simulations to understand what that cooling needs to be. But then we took it a step farther with machine learning and other things that we actually put a model in the lab, worked out the kinks of that model, if you will. And after working out the kinks of that model, we've actually run and demonstrated it as well to JPO and to Lockheed Martin in this particular case to make sure that they understood that we could indeed meet the cooling requirements of today and the cooling requirements of tomorrow. We believe that there's a combination of digital requirements as well as lab requirements that's necessary. I think the two work hand in hand. And so you can have a digital platform, run your simulations, make sure that your theories are proper. But then when you run something in the lab, you find out that everything is not like the theory is. There are losses that you run across. And so with that being the case, we've run in the lab now for quite some time, and we have demonstrated, the kilowattage that's needed for cooling, and we can go above that kilowattage as well. But it's the combination of both. Digital, model-based engineering is necessary today for speed, for sure. But also lab testing can't be denied. It's something that's very real, and something that if you do it properly, you'll actually reduce the risk, and you'll be ready to go when the time is to go. So we're looking forward to working with industry to make sure that that sort of solution gets onto the platforms going forward, in whatever form that takes. I'm excited about it because anytime we can increase or improve the capabilities for our warfighter, it's a good day.
There you go. We are unfortunately almost out of time, but I want to end here, as I do in a lot of these chats. We have people who are staff in the room, watching online, advocates, people from different industries that are hearing kind of the conversation today about kind of technology, modernization. What's the one thing that you hope they take away from this morning's conversation?
Oh my goodness, can I give you two or three?
The floor is yours, Henry.
Right. Excellent. Number one, I think the mission is to make sure that the U.S. maintains the leading security advantage. We all benefit from it, personally, frankly, and we need to make sure that that continues. We also need to make sure that we have the most advanced weapons and technology that we can bring to bear, and we need to share with the defense industries what we have. We need to make sure that they can get it at a cost that makes sense for the taxpayers so that they're not overburdened with us modernizing our platforms. And then, frankly, the partners in industry we need, right? So we need to make sure that we're working together with whatever partners there are, whether it be the primes for the vehicles themselves or the technology generators. We need to make sure that we're working with the partners as well. So I would say that it's making sure that we ensure capability and readiness, making sure that we continue to test and get the technology to the bleeding edge, if you will, so that we can provide solutions that haven't been provided yet, and then working with the partners in industry. And wherever we can use commercial items, if you will, to do defense work, we should be able to do that. I think that's an important part of how we go forward and make this thing, cost effective as well.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Henry, thank you so much for your time
this morning.
A big thank you to Representative DeLauro and her team for working with us on this event, and to Collins Aerospace and RTX Corporation for partnering with us to make this conversation possible. We have many other events happening in the month of May. You can go to punchbowl.news and check those out. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.